Welcome back to Five Sports. We got a great show for you today. We'll be talking about the NBA Finals, the winner of the Stanley Cup Finals. We'll be talking about the Blue Jays' first time in the playoffs since 2016, I believe. We're going to talk about week 3 of the NFL season. And Evan and Daria will break down the Premier League. So let's start NBA. We know who the finals are going to be. It's going to be LA Lakers versus the Miami Heat. Lakers in the finals for the first time since 2010, and the Miami Heat for the first time since 2014. Who you guys are think are going to take the series?
Yeah, so this should be it's going to be a very interesting series. A finale finally to this season, which we never thought we were going to get, to be honest, at one point. It is great to see that Miami is in there. I was always saying that they were a dark horse in the playoffs, and they really did prove to be that. I think so far, especially in their match against Boston, they were the better team in that series. And coming into this game, into this series against the Lakers, we won't lie here. I think the Lakers are favorites, and that on paper at least. But I do think the Heat will give them a run for their money. And that's to say that I think that the series will go to 6 games. But I do think the Lakers will win it in the end. I think they have the X factor in this series. But you know what? Don't discount Miami at all, because they have come a far way to come to this final. It's really good to see them back in it, to be honest. It's been a while. And they're a very balanced side, and I'm excited to see what this final. I think it's going to be a great final series. I think it's going to be a great championship.
We clearly have the two best teams. You can argue the Clippers in the West, if they beat Denver, will they beat the Lakers? Fact is, Denver beat them. The Clippers choked it by Doc Rivers. Good run in LA for him, but didn't win anything, so it really means nothing. But this the Miami Lakers series, it's going to be a tough one. It really is, because you have very I think unique teams. I think Miami just came out of the blue this year, but they've proved to everyone and themselves that they belong, that they are the best team in the East. They beat Milwaukee in 5, which was an incredible accomplishment, because we know what Milwaukee's done in the regular season for the last 2 years, but we saw what happened last year against the Raptors. What happened this year against Miami? Just good teams came out to play, and Miami is just on a different level right now. They're completely in sync. Hero and Duncan Robinson, they don't miss threes. If one's off, the other one's just on fire. It's really fun to see those two going at it as rookies. So they're going to have terrific careers. Jimmy Butler sets the tone. Bam Adebayo, terrific inside. He's going to give Davis a lot of problems, just like he's given every other center that he's come up with this season a lot of problems. He's already established himself as a top 3 big man in this league. And again, only a rookie. And then you have the role players. You got Jay Crowder, Iguodala, Olynyk if he plays. They're so deep. They remind me a little bit of the Raptors. They play different styles, but it's always defense first. They're well coached. Spoelstra's done a terrific job. And despite what the Lakers have, this is definitely going to be their hardest test, because with all due respect to Denver, who was their toughest challenge, I think Miami is just on a different level, and they're playing more as a team. Jamal Murray, I think, often carried them, and then just kind of once they played the Lakers, they ran out of gas. All that being said, I have Miami in 7. I think it has to go 7. Just no matter what happens. I think maybe the Lakers get a win from the refs. Miami, he will get a win from the refs. They'll do what I'm pretty sure the NBA will do whatever to push it to 7. Again, we don't know what happens. That's why they got to play the games. But you probably do have the two best teams since they entered the bubble playing in the playoff or in the finals. So it's great to see, and it's going to be a terrific finals matchup, because there really isn't much to separate these two teams.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a good series. And I'll give you guys my piece on this, but I have also Lakers in 6, personally. I think Miami has – even the Lakers probably has the better key, the best players are probably I put over Miami's. I'd say Miami overall is a deeper team and overall a better team that you could depend on more players to kind of deliver. But I mean, even before in the beginning of the season, you guys know this, and it's not just because I am a Lakers fan. I had Lakers beating the Clippers when people were predicting who would win 2. I had Lakers going to finals and Lakers winning it all. And it's because I knew like even though they don't have like the deepest team, they have Anthony Davis and LeBron, and LeBron's the type of player that can make the rest of his team better. And like we've seen this year, like LeBron may not be like from his like actual athletic standpoint, he's not having his best season in his career or anything like that. But the way he plays the game, his mentality, he's probably playing one of his smarter seasons. And because he's been able to facilitate even more, he's been able to make his team to the caliber that to take it to the finals. And like I've been like LeBron's like biggest like critic like over the years. I have never been much of a LeBron fan. Only when he became a Laker, since I wanted to like root for him. But he has really proven himself as like even at his age that he can still play his game, and he's also adapting the way he plays. He's evolving it. He knows that he can't physically do what he did back when he was in Miami. He has to really depend on players like Davis to like make himself better and make them better as well. And because of that, I think that experience, that veteran experience that he brings to being in the finals, like I think for the ninth to tenth time I believe, I think that will be key to facing Miami. Miami's a great team, but I think the experience that LeBron has and the capabilities that he has, and like he has that to make his team a championship team, it's going to take them to finals, and it's going to take them to win it.
Miami is just a much better team. The only way you win this game consistently is if Anthony Davis is hitting mid ranges, because he's not going to get anything inside. They're too big. They're too strong. You have Bam's going to do a great job on him, and they have other guys that could kind of put size on him on those blocks. Out. You have Jay Crowder being there, done that. He's just Anthony Davis. From what I've seen from the playoffs, he has to be the one carrying, and I think Miami has too many ways, and they're gonna have a lot of different things to throw at this Lakers team. I think LeBron's obviously slowed down. He's not the same player. He's had some great quarters. His passing has always been on point. I think his distribution has been really good throughout the year. I think the way he's finding, the guys like KCP, Danny Green, he creates that. My problem is the Lakers, I don't think, have good enough players that are going to consistently hit shots. Danny Green, we've seen over the last 2 years, hasn't done it in the playoffs. He didn't do it for didn't really do it for the Raptors. He didn't really help them. He was almost one of the reasons why they almost would have lost to Golden State. And he's not really helping the Lakers this year. It's not really about Danny Green though. It's just about the whole team. I think Miami as a team, they have so many different ways to beat you, and they're so quick. And I don't know how they're going to catch up to Huron Robinson running around the 3-point line. They run around like Curry and Thompson. They're obviously not the same caliber of players, but they kind of create that same level of intensity and mismatches for the defense because they're so hard to keep track of. And then you're constantly switching. And I think Miami has had a much harder road to the finals. Not I think I know, because when you look at the Lakers beating Houston with no player over 6'8", the Lakers could just dominate that series as they pretty much did. And Portland, with all due respect, we're not the same team that they have been in the previous years. Miami just looks so poised to do it. I think everyone's kind of relying on LeBron and Anthony Davis. I have not seen them at their best in the bubble. I don't think this is the best version of them. I think Frank Vogel's done a terrific job. I think when they play at pace, they're really good. I love when the ball, they get the rebound and sometimes the ball just doesn't even touch the floor. Pass, dunk. That's what they're able to. Quick shout out to Rajon Rondo, because he's been terrific ever since the Houston series. Towards the end of the Houston series, throughout the Denver matchup, he's almost reinvented himself, showing his old Boston days. So credit to Rajon Rondo for being a great role player. Dwight Howard, I think Miami knows what the Lakers are all about, and I think Miami just has so many different things that they could throw at them. I find trouble seeing any team beating Miami in a 7-game series. I just think they're that good right now.
You haven't seen LeBron and Davis at their best, but like you saying that's implying that when it comes to finals, we won't see them bring their best, because like I mean they're both top 5 players in the league. They're both players that when they're on a game, it's going to change everything. And like in a 7-game series, they're telling me that they won't bring their best. Like in the finals, that there'll be more games where they don't than they do.
I think they'll bring their best. I just think Miami's best I think Miami is on a different level right now. they remind me a lot of the Raptors. Again, not in the style of play, because Miami shoots a lot more threes. Toronto did a lot more kind of in the paint, kind of driving with Kawhi Leonard. Again, completely different teams, and they're set up completely differently. But I think with Miami, they have a guy like Kawhi Leonard and Jimmy Butler who sets the tone. Kawhi is obviously a better scorer, better player than Jimmy Butler. It's not a hot. We all know that Kawhi Leonard is just a different caliber of offensive talent. But we know what Jimmy Butler brings, and he has guys around him that are doing exactly what they're supposed to do, and they're doing it at a level that we didn't think they would be able to reach this year. They have completely overachieved, and it's great to see when you have guys like Huron Robinson not missing shots, because Miami is a fun team to watch. They are the most enjoyable team to actually watch out of the East, and I'm happy they're in the finals because they're going to I think out of all the teams, they're going to give the Lakers the best run for their money. I don't think Boston, Toronto, or Milwaukee would beat the Lakers this year. I think Miami, with the way they play and their quickness, are going to give them I think they're going to win that series in 7, simply because shooters shoot. They're on fire, and they've been on fire throughout the playoffs. So unless they drop their 3-point percentage significantly, I struggle to see the Lakers winning this finals, despite having LeBron and AD.
Everything you say about Miami, I agree with that. Like, Miami is a great team. Don't get me wrong, and that's if they do take a series, it's not going to be like the most surprising. I won't even call it an upset because they are such a great team.
To me, the only way the Lakers push this to 7, I think Miami could win it in 6, but I think it's going to be a ref game in Game 5 or 6, where we see it every single year in the playoffs, where the refs just give away a game. We know it's going to be to the Lakers. If unless they're up 3-0 or 3-1 or something, then probably it'll be normally a ref series, to put that in strange terms. But I bought into Miami this year so much. I predicted them to beat Boston. I didn't predict them to beat Milwaukee, but once they beat Milwaukee, I started to kind of see what made this team special, and this is a special team.
Regardless, it's going to be a great series. I think we could both agree to that.
Yeah, it's going to be a great series. We'll see what happens. Game 1 goes Wednesday, so make sure you watch that, because we can almost guarantee it's going to be a great series. Let's switch on to the NHL, where the Tampa Bay Lightning are now Stanley Cup champions. A terrific run for them. They beat a good Dallas team. Again, probably the best team on paper, if we're being honest, and they've overcome their playoff demons, their shortcomings, and they are now Stanley Cup champions. So Matthew, how did they do it? What was the formula?
They have the talent, they have the offensive firepower, and then they have the defense. And Victor Hedman won Conn Smythe. Congratulations to him. He did a great job all playoffs. And I think this just goes to show like how having that talent bringing there, because Dallas played great hockey throughout the entire playoff series, and Dallas lost. All credit to them for how they've done this year. But Tampa Bay at the end of the day was just a better team, and everyone expects them to be a better team. Everyone comes in every season thinking, "Oh, Tampa Bay is the most talented team on the ice," and every year, for the past few years, we've been disappointed by their lack of results. But they deserve to win. They've deserved to win a Stanley Cup win for a while now, and they finally got it. So congratulations to them.
Yeah, it's never easy to win a Stanley Cup, and we know they believe that they should have had one already. So it's nice to see that they won. Just on social media, I've seen a lot of people saying there's an asterisk. That's just one of the dumbest things I've ever read.
If it's your own team who wins, you're not going to say there's an asterisk. So
look, you have to understand the level of competition has been phenomenal throughout the Stanley Cup. There really hasn't been a drop off in play, and it's basically every game's an away game. You're really not playing at home because you're not playing in your home city. You're in a hotel room, right? You don't have the same food. Everything's different, and really for these players, it's kind of a cycle. They're in their routine a lot of the time, and they kind of have their set rituals to kind of get ready for a game, and that was probably really thrown off. So 24 teams had an opportunity. One survived. So I again, credit Tampa Bay. Could Brain Point have won the Conn Smythe? Yes. Did Victor Hedman also deserve it? Yeah. There's a lot of deserving candidates, and that's what kind of made this team special. It wasn't really one guy. Kucherov, terrific playoffs. I think he had 25 assists or something
Yeah.
throughout, 25 plus. It's just unheard of numbers.
A lot of players could have won it, and you wouldn't have
Yeah.
been surprised with this team.
This team was in sync, though. Dallas played their hearts out. I think we knew what Dallas was about. We knew what Dallas was going to bring, but I think Tampa Bay just had that little, extra trick up their sleeve that they were saving for the series. And we kind of saw it. Vasilevsky played terrific. Hudobin looked a bit shaky. A little bit of, rebounds that maybe he should have had. Yeah, tough for Dallas because they had a lot of good stars on there. You want to see a lot of guys win, like Corey Perry. A lot of people are rooting for guys like Corey Perry, Jamie Benn. He's a great guy. They have a lot of guys that are easy to root for offensively. So tough for Dallas. But credit to Tampa Bay because they played their hearts out, and there's really not too much to say other than they are deserving Stanley Cup champions.
I completely agree with you on that.
Let's move on. Another playoff team in Toronto. They haven't been playing in Toronto. They've been playing in Buffalo, but it's the Toronto Blue Jays. I think let's start off by saying we have not really been watching the Blue Jays just because of how much has been going on. I think as, NHL and NBA fans, I think it's hard to kind of balance everything. But when we have watched the Jays, the Blue Jays have, young. We know about their young, exciting hitters, Guerrero, Bichette, Biggio, but they've gotten a lot of. They have a lot more depth than previous years since they made the playoffs. Again, they're not the team that had those not Stanley Cup, World Series aspirations, but they're a team that's kind of building towards that. Daria, we'll start with you. Can the Blue Jays maybe create an upset behind their pitching with their ace, Ryu, who's been terrific all year? We know that he's looked like a number one guy that deserves to be paid the money that he is getting. And then we have a young Nate Pearson who throws absolute heat. We've seen we have a small sample size of Nate Pearson, but the small sample size does look encouraging.
Well, it is a difficult one because I think we can all agree that great pitching wins you playoff games.
Yes.
And that was proven back in 2015, 2016 when they had the core of David Price and so on. The thing is with this team, and I think what a lot of Jays fans will worry about is not from the hitting point, but is the pitching. I'm not even talking about starters necessarily. We have Ryu, who has been great. He's had his ups and downs, but for the most part, he has been the ace that we.
I mean, an ERA of just over 2. I think it's 2.19.
It's fantastic.
I don't know how that ranks against other guys, but he has to be in the top 5 of ERA.
He's been great,
so,
especially in the second half of the season for them. He's been great. In terms of the relief pitching is where I'm very nervous about. We don't have quite that core that we used to have, and then again, it never really was a feature for the Blue Jays. And in terms of how to get past the Rays, it's really going to be a tough one. You're playing against the number 1 seed in the AL. I do think there is a chance for the Blue Jays. Obviously, with the hitting and with this young core that they have in this team, I think they have a chance. But even more so is the fact that them being in the playoffs is a very significant thing for Blue Jays fans for the future, because this will, if they go out and they lose these first 2 games and they get out of the playoffs, the most important thing is the fact that they'll have experience. And for a season that wasn't even, we were thinking was not going to even happen, I'm glad to see the Blue Jays will be taking part in this so that it can add on to next year. We all know that this is a work in progress, and that for next season they will be looking for better pitching and to fix certain places in the team. But the fact of the matter is that they're in a playoff race playoff matchup against the Rays, the number 1 team in the AL, and I think they just have to play as best as they can. It's one of those where as Blue Jays fans, we can hope to see good performances from our starters and from the relief pitchers, and to see some great hitting, and just to honestly watch a great game of baseball.
Yeah, I want to go back to your point about the bullpen. I think that's a crucial point you mentioned, because we've seen over the years when the Blue Jays were in the playoffs, games are so often won and lost to the bullpen. Without a good bullpen, I mean, a great bullpen really helps you win a World Series because you need guys that close games out in the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th. You need almost shutdown guys when it comes to that. Do the Jays have that? Probably not. It's something that we've struggled with over the last few years. It's gotten better this year, but I don't think it's for sure not at the level where you need it to be if you want to win a World Series. Uh, Going back to Ryu, I'll just correct myself. He has a 2.69, not 2.19 ERA, which is
Wow,
8th in the entire league.
that's fantastic.
So top 5 for sure in the American. So again, credit to him because again, we have a smaller sample size than previous years, but I think that only helps the Jays because there's teams like the Miami Marlins who shouldn't be there, who kind of snuck in based off the fact that it was a shortened season. They played a good 60 games, and here we are with that team. With that being said, with everything that's going to be that has been going on in the world of sports, have I been keeping track of baseball like I usually do? No, because usually baseball is the only thing going on in the summer, and kind of that's the one thing you're able to focus on. But again, it's playoff time. It's Toronto. It's a major Toronto team in the playoffs. You know that they're going to have everyone's attention, so it's an exciting time if you're a baseball fan, if you're a Jays fan, because I think we're going to see a lot of good baseball throughout the league, not just in this series. Let's move on to the NFL, where we had a lot of great Week 3 games. Let's start with the game of the week. Let's start with Baltimore, Kansas City. Kansas City got the win 34-20. Baltimore struggled in a lot of aspects. Mahomes looks like the future Hall of Famer that we all believe he will be. Maybe the future greatest of all time, where I think he's going to end up. Special talent, Patrick Mahomes. What a joy he is to watch week in and week out. If you're an NFL fan, how can you not be excited for the next 20 years, knowing that we may potentially be watching the greatest of all time in Patrick Mahomes? But let's not get too far ahead of him, ourselves. Pardon me. There's a lot of football left in his career. Let's simply talk about the game last night. Baltimore fell short. I think we should start with the Ravens fan. What did you like? What didn't you like from your team?
That was a disappointing game. Like, okay, the Kansas City Chiefs is the best offense in the league. I knew that
Yeah.
going in. I knew if there's one game that the Ravens would lose this year, it would have to be against. It was going to be against the Chiefs. So like, I'm not necessarily disappointed about the loss. I'm disappointed about how we lost, and that's because the two biggest things we have when we win are what disappointed me. It was our defense, and then Lamar Jackson. And I'll start with the defense. The defense was a mess yesterday. We looked sloppy. There was so much miscommunication. I mean, Mahomes is going to get the touchdowns. He's going to get yards against any team he plays. But defense like the Ravens, we should have tried to limit him. But like, we chose last night to be the most lackluster we've been in a while, and it was the worst team to choose that night to be. Like, you could maybe have an excuse for that any other game, but against a team like Kansas City, against a quarterback like Mahomes, you can't afford that. It was an off night for them. I think. Do I think that the defense is in trouble? No. And next week we play, our defense will be fine. Like I am confident that our defense will come back and we'll be still one of the best defenses in the league throughout the season. We just chose the wrong night to be off. We chose the wrong night to be sloppy, and I hope this is a wake up call because as great as our team is, we are not invincible against other great teams, and they should know that. And I hope they realize this going forward. Now I'll go on to Lamar Jackson. Only 92 for 97 yards, and okay, there's been many jokes like him. He's only a running back and all that. Like he can throw. At this point, like anyone who says he can't throw hasn't been watching him for the last 2 years, and like I just can't like just know. If you're saying like he's not a good passer, like actually watch his games. And it's just like, but enough of that. He played bad yesterday, and I don't try to put all the blame on him because our offensive line wasn't great. Yeah, he got sacked like 4 times. Usually our O line is better than that. Usually our O line kind of gives him more opportunities to run and to have time to make a good pass. Didn't do that for him, and also Mark Andrews. He dropped the ball way too many times last game, and especially since Mark Andrews is usually his favorite target, the fact that he didn't come through was like a huge loss. I mean, he could have gone to the next touchdown, and that could have changed the game. But do I think we would deserve to win? No. To be honest, I think it's a miracle we only lost by 2 possessions because based on how bad our defense played and how like poor their offense played as well. I mean, that means like a credit to Mahomes, like credit to where credit due. It's not because we played. I mean, we did play bad, but like it's also because Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs are just such a good offense as well. But again, that being said, that's no excuse for Ravens. When you come in, this team, okay, regardless of what people says, Ravens as a team, the talent we have is a Super Bowl contender. Like in terms of like, will we win a playoff game or not? In terms of the talent that we have, is this team on any day good enough to win a Super Bowl? And yes, it is. But something I've noticed about Lamar, like I noticed that each playoff series he plays, I noticed in like every game that he does lose, and he hasn't lost many, but once he loses whenever we don't have the lead early on. If he gets us the lead early on, then we're fine. But once we don't have the lead, he's going to struggle to make that big plays to win the game. And I think he can develop that. I think he can like still have time to learn that and be able to overcome his nerve in that area. But until he does, I'm gonna be worried whenever we face teams like Kansas City. And people say, "Yeah, I can't say," but it's the Kansas City Chiefs. It's the best team in the league. But yeah, but you guys want to win the Super Bowl, so you guys have to beat a team like Kansas City Chiefs to win the Super Bowl. So like, honestly, I came in here like expecting to have a huge rant, but honestly, I just hope more that this is a wake up call for the Ravens.
And let me address a few things that you said. I'll start with what I agree with you. I think Lamar Jackson is a really good thrower of the football. I think he often does find those tight spaces. I think he can thread a ball extremely well, and I think that part of his game gets overshadowed because of his skill set as a runner. Here's what I don't like about Baltimore. They don't have that aerial threat. They really only have Marquise Brown, who we haven't seen much of because their focus is always on the run. They're focused on establishing the run game, whether you get Lamar going, whether you get Mark Ingram going. I think Baltimore has to realize you can't win playoff games consistently with that formula. Because I think once you get into the playoffs, defenses are too strong. Defenses understand that, and I think the way you hurt defenses is with a really good pass. I think a good passing game is almost now more important than a good run game, simply just because of the way the NFL is played today. Maybe 10 years ago, we're talking about a different story, but there was really no QB like Lamar. Like maybe you could compare Michael Vick, but Michael Vick was a much better thrower of the football. He was good because he can throw 70 yards downfield, and then he could run the ball. Then he could scramble for 15, 20 yards, and he was quick. That's what made him a threat. I think Lamar Jackson, what makes him a threat first is his run game, and you don't win playoff games consistently with that formula. We saw that against Tennessee last year. They had the answer as a 6th seed, and we saw it. I forget who you guys lost to 2 years ago. It was the Chargers.
Chargers.
But again, that was Lamar's first playoff game. That was really an ugly game. When you actually think back, they really got for 3.5 quarters destroyed in that game. They kind of had that comeback late, but anyways, that was a long time ago. Lamar is a much better player. I think Lamar can throw. The problem is he has no wide receiver options because Willie Snead is just, with all due respect to Willie Snead, not a very good receiver anymore. Baltimore has to. I think John Harbaugh has to realize he has to throw the ball more. It's good when you're beating bad teams and you can run the ball and you kind of have the time of possession. Great. But against good teams, that doesn't work. We saw it against Patrick Mahomes. They score so quickly and in so many ways. I would be amazed if Kansas City doesn't win the Super Bowl this year. Because who the hell beats that team? Who beats Kansas City? Patrick Mahomes is a different level of QB. We talk about Tom Brady being the GOAT. Patrick Mahomes is such a better thrower of the football. And they have so many. Tyreek Hill, that catch over in the end of the second quarter. I forget who. I'm not sure if it was Marlon Humphrey caught it over. One of your corners. And just it looks so easy. Mahomes 40 yards, Tyreek Hill over the shoulder. He's a small guy, Tyreek Hill, but he's so quick. And then you have Mecole Hardman, Sammy Watkins, Travis Kelce as the best tight end in the league. How do you beat this team? And on defense, they have a great D line. corners a bit inexperienced, but it almost seems like it doesn't matter because the rest of your team is so good. Um, I'm struggling to see how he'll beat Baltimore. The one thing I'll disagree with what you said is I don't see Baltimore as a Super Bowl contender simply because I don't know how they beat a Kansas City. I don't think Lamar and that offense has a plan B if their run game doesn't work. If that makes any sense. They need to be able to throw the ball at a consistent level, and I haven't seen that in the first 2 years of his career. I think Lamar Jackson is a terrific QB. I think he is a very good thrower of the football. I think he can throw the ball. I just haven't seen it enough. 50 passing yards in a game where they were down from the get-go is not good enough. So that's what they have to improve in order for me to say, yes, they can win a Super Bowl, because they're not being the Chiefs anytime soon. And there's a few teams that will cause some trouble in the playoffs. Pittsburgh's a great defense. I think Pittsburgh and Baltimore tied 1-2 in that defense. Well, look, Baltimore, they beat Houston and who'd they beat week 1? Houston and Cleveland. Those are 2 garbage teams. So with all due respect to those 2 teams, I think Baltimore's had an easy 2 weeks. They haven't been challenged. That was their challenge. Will they make that many mistakes in future games? No. Will they have that level of kind of miscommunication and just breakdowns on the back end? No. But Kansas City will always have that deep threat. They're a tough team to stop. I wouldn't be too harsh on them, on the Baltimore Ravens, simply because they ran into a team that's playing great football. And you ran into the best team in the league. I think it's a little more complicated than that, but I think that's what the bottom line comes down to.
Yeah, and I'll say this. And then first of all, I think history's being made because for once, I actually agree with your take on the Ravens. And I mean, you're right. We need an aerial threat. Like, something I've noticed in the past 2 games against the Texans and Browns. I know they weren't the toughest competition.
The horrible teams. Like Bill O'Brien can't coach. They lost Hopkins. Houston with a top. Okay, at the very least, top 5, but I think top 3 on talent. Just quickly, let me say this: I want to get this out of my chest on Houston very quickly. Bill O'Brien has to get fired. I hate Bill O'Brien. Everyone hates Bill O'Brien. The fact that they're 0-3 with Deshaun Watson as their QB, joke. I had to say that. You could go on with that point. I just had to get that off my chest.
Yeah, those 2 teams, they weren't much competition, and I mean, something I noticed past the games that Lamar wasn't he was passing well those games, but it's like he looked more comfortable as a passer those 2 games, even though again not great teams, but he looked more comfortable as a passer than he did previous seasons. But I also think that that's because we already had to lead those games, and he didn't have that pressure of having to throw big. Exactly. And once we see Team Kansas City, he has that pressure on him. And I'll say this as well. Yeah. I realize that we aren't. You're completely right that it's going to be trouble for us to win a Super Bowl. Anything that I stand by what I said that on paper we're a Super Bowl team, but football isn't played on paper; it's played on the field. So I agree that we need to develop that aerial threat to actually give teams like Kansas City an actual challenge, and to give our playoff teams with great defenses a greater challenge.
Before we move on to other games, I'll just say this about I think what we learned last night is, look, Kansas City is a special team. Andy Reid has so many options, and he has so many. Even that pass to the fullback for that second touchdown. Who thinks of that? You have 17 different options on offense, and his play is like run a screen, do a little dump to your fullback, and get in. Andy Reid has the luxury of having so many options that there's no way of preparing to stop that team, because when you have to stop that team, when they have 4 downs to operate, and 10 and 12 on third down, but a lot of those are short third downs, it's hard to stop. Kansas City made a very good Baltimore defense look ordinary, and that's hard to do. Yeah. I think that's where the credit lies, unless you have a final thought.
I mean, like I said before, Kansas City was firing on all cylinders. Ravens looked a bit messy yesterday, and it was a wrong game for that combination. So, and we saw the result of how it happened. I think it's a miracle, again, that we lost by only 2 possessions. But, again, credit to Kansas City because they played a great game.
Another big game at Dallas-Seattle. I don't want to spend too much on this because there's a lot of other games going on. I think we spent a lot of time on the Baltimore-Kansas City game. But again, as the Cowboys, I'll let one of you guys start, and then I'll kind of finish it off. Yeah, Dallas Cowboys. What do you make from that game? What can you kind of take away?
I mean, I think the takeaway is how good the Seahawks have played. How great Russ has been doing. The whole thing with let Russ cook, and then he's been cooking all season. I mean, I think it's funny to say because Russ has already had a great career so far, but I think this year we're seeing his full potential like unleashed right now, and his full ability and capabilities as a quarterback. And I mean, that was offense's game. And credit to Dak as well. Dak had a great game as well, but I just think that Seattle offense is such a threat, and Cowboys defense is not great. And against a team like Seattle, they aren't going to be able to stop them because they get a lot of open. Seattle gets a lot of open throws. They'll be making these like passes. They'll be like making these completions against a good defense. And so a defense like the Cowboys, again, no offense to the Cowboys, but they they don't seem like they have a plan to stop Seattle on the defense front.
Yeah, I'm gonna go off that, but Daria, I'll let you go because I have a lot to say about what Choi just said.
Yeah, no, just to echo off of what Troy's saying, I do think that I know it's week 3, but from the NFC, they are probably the Seahawks are the most impressive team in the NFC. I do think they keep having these performances that they from all around, whether it's offensively or defensively, they're very strong overall. They have a lot of Russell Wilson's playing some great football right now. He has some great targets to go with, and the running play's been great as usual. I hate saying that as a Patriot fan, but they're very impressive in the NFC. That being said, about Dallas, I honestly I don't know if Dallas fans were feeling this, but there's a little bit of deja vu watching that game because it was almost exactly the same game against Atlanta. But of course they came up short. And the thing I noticed is that Dallas seemed offensively to be great. They seem to have Dak Prescott, at least in these last 2 games, firing on somewhat all cylinders. I just feel like the targets he have not been particularly the best. I mean, I don't know if Amari Cooper did all that much on against the Seahawks, but I did see that Dak definitely does have a lot of targets. It's the ones he chooses that are quite can be strange at times. He does go with the running play quite a bit. My point being, though, is that Dallas overall offensively are impressive. Defensively, I'm not sure. Right now, they seem to be kind of a mess. And that being said, I don't know. They're in a division that isn't particularly great. So they're still very much on top there. But that being said, it's kind of underwhelming to say the least. And we have to see where Dallas goes from here.
You guys are generous. Quickly, the division isn't one of the worst. It is one of the worst of all time. Maybe the worst of all time. Dallas actually has talent on the offensive side, so that's why I mean, you kind of excuse the Rams game as being week 1, but then again, the Falcons game I don't even want to talk about because that was just a fluke. Kind of all the events that led up to it. You could talk about. There's so many moments that you could pinpoint in that Atlanta game where the game could have swung in a different direction for both teams. You talk about Julio Jones dropping a TD pass that usually doesn't happen. Onside kicks, you don't recover. Going for 2 when you can make it a 1 possession game instead of, again, just simple things. Actually, I want to quickly talk about that play last week against Atlanta when they went for 2 when they were down 9 to make it a 7-point game. That just scares me about Mike McCarthy. I just want to quickly talk about Mike McCarthy. He seems like he's been out of the game for a year, and kind of analytically, it's kind of he seems a little kind of stuck in the past when it comes to analytics and kind of the way he likes to play. I think football's kind of evolved, and it almost seems too much to adapt. And I think just other coaches that have more exciting offenses than Mike McCarthy. He wasn't an exciting hire. He doesn't bring that excitement. He feels like a very safe hire, and that's what I don't like about Mike McCarthy. That play aside, that 2-point conversion, that's really, not an important conversation. What bothers me about Dallas and why they hired Mike McCarthy, offensively, they've looked, I think since week 1, they've looked very good offensively. I think in the second half, they were terrific on that end of the ball. They found a way to kind of limit Seattle in the second half from doing what they wanted to, but they dug themselves into too deep a hole in Seattle. found a way to kind of escape. Here's why Dallas won't win a Super Bowl, because their secondary is horrible. Like, if we're talking about a Super Bowl contending team, look at that secondary. It sucks. It's a joke. There's so many I can't even count how many stupid penalties they gave away on third down. I don't know, like holding, PI, like they're always a step behind. It's a consistent theme from the first 3 weeks of this year, from last year and the year before. Like, if you're the Dallas Cowboys, you have Earl Thomas sitting there as a free agent. What are you doing? How do you not call Earl Thomas? Tell him to get his ass over there and straighten out some of that defense. Like, do you think having a guy like Earl Thomas doesn't help some of the young guys? It doesn't make sense. We have the young rookie in Trayvon Diggs, who's looked like their best piece in the secondary, but then again, he's kind of a raw rookie. We drafted him whenever we took him in the second round. He's a second round rookie, and he's the best player in that secondary. Outside of Alden Smith, DeMarcus Lawrence has sucked. Everson Griffin, I expect to see more out of, but 3 weeks in, new team, you give him the benefit of the doubt from what we've seen in his career. But yeah, Alden Smith is the only guy, and Trayvon Diggs, I think, gets a pass from me, but the rest of the secondary just sucks. There's a reason they're 1-2 and second in the division, because A, their division sucks, B, their secondary sucks. That's why they're 1-2. Luckily, they play that division 6 times a year. They haven't faced them once yet, but you should go 5-1 against those teams. No, sorry, you should go 6-0 against the Giants, the Eagles, and the Washington football team. The one thing I will say about the NFC is, I think for the first time, the NFC is weaker than the AFC. I think the AFC has more talent. Outside the NFC West, the Packers, can they sustain a playoff run? Is their defense good enough? Will Aaron Rodgers have enough juice to maybe beat a high-scoring team like the Seahawks, like the 49ers, if they get healthy on defense? The Saints, we'll get to them in a second. They don't look very good. Again, I don't want to spend too much time on the Cowboys, but their secondary is a joke, and that's why they won't win anything. You had the best safety sitting there in Jamal Adams. I don't know why you don't give up a first, I don't know, why don't you give up 2 first-rounders? Your offense is complete. Your D-line is very good, but your secondary is just as good as the Jets. And look, you're not going to win with this when having that kind of secondary. They give up too many yards. Russell Wilson can do whatever he wants, throwing it downfield. Look, DK Metcalf should have had a touchdown, if not for that incredible hustle play, but just an incredible effort by Trayvon Diggs. We'll move on from the Cowboys, but it's just not encouraging, because it seems very similar to last year. They could put up points on offense. They have plenty of talent on offense. It's the defense that's going to keep costing them games, and we see it over and over again. Jerry Jones doesn't seem to want to change it, and yeah, the Cowboys. We can have all the expectations that we want. We can have all the talent in the world. It doesn't matter if you can't stop the home run play. Let's switch to the New Orleans Saints, because they are now in a division with Tom Brady. The Buccaneers are right now the early favorites, as they are 2-1 compared to the Saints being 1-2. But what do you see out of the Saints, and why are they struggling as badly as they are?
I think a huge piece that they lost is Michael Thomas, their number 1 receiver, and I think Drew Brees, he's not the quarterback that he was before. He can't just make anyone his weapon. I think he needs someone like Michael Thomas to kind of like elevate his talent at the moment. And losing like key offensive pieces like that, it's going to have an effect. It's like we said earlier in this podcast, like the NFL is such a passing like league, and you need that quarterback and the receiver to kind of like fire all cylinders. But when you don't have the receiver to help the quarterback fire like that, then you're not going to win games as you expect them to. And I mean, saying stuff on Kamara. Kamara has been playing like single-handedly. Kamara has been like kind of carrying the team to having like somewhat close games. But like Drew Brees needs to do better. And again, he needs to. When Michael Thomas comes back, maybe he will. But even without Thomas, he needs to be able to use the weapons he has on his team.
Yeah, Drew Brees clearly can't throw deep anymore. He can have all the passing accuracy stats he wants, but like he could dump it off to Alvin Kamara and set up screens all you want. Teams will adjust, teams will adapt, and despite Alvin Kamara, I don't know how many yards he did. That one play in the second half, what
Yeah.
a run! Just sometimes in open field, Alvin Kamara can't get tackled, but you can't beat teams with one play. Drew Brees clearly doesn't have the arm strength. This team won't do anything in the playoffs, simply because Drew Brees can't throw deep, and you're not gonna. They played. They're just it's an old fashioned style right now, and they're gonna have to move on from Drew Brees probably at the end of the year because look, I'm not gonna question greatness. I think he's had a terrific career. There's no, he's gonna be a future Hall of Famer, but sometimes age does catch up to you, and the Saints just look like a shell of their former selves. Can they recover late on and kind of will they make the playoffs? Probably, but do I think they're actually gonna make a deep run? No, because that team just looks so uninspired right now, and
I mean,
it's an aging team, and they don't really have that kind of to me they don't have that energy that kind of I'm used to seeing from the Saints.
you compared Buccaneers and Saints, and then you said like Tom Brady and Drew Brees, they're both at the kind of ends of
Yeah,
their
but
careers.
you have to look
And
at
but Tampa Bay,
yeah, but
they
you have
have the
to
weapons. They
exactly.
have
I was
receivers.
going to say you have to look at the two different teams. Mike Evans and
Yeah,
Chris Godwin's are two of the best receivers in the game. You have Gronk. We'll see how his role develops because I'm convinced that he's not going to just be a blocking tight end. He's too talented for that, and I'm sure they'll start incorporating him once they start to get healthy. Chris Godwin just came back. So I think Bruce Arians has a lot to work with, but that defense
yeah,
is also underrated. Levante, David in the middle, he's been underrated for years. Now he's kind of getting the recognition he deserves because he's playing on a contending team finally. But there's a lot of guys on Tampa Bay's defense. We saw last year. The only reason they lost games because Jameis Winston had control issues. When Jameis Winston was throwing 5 touchdowns, no interceptions, they looked great and they won. When he had those control issues, they didn't win very often, and that's why they were on Tom Brady because, despite he doesn't really have that home run ball, but he's not going to turn the ball over for you.
yeah.
You can say, oh, he had 2 picks in week 1. Look, that's an outlier. We know what Tom Brady's going to give you. When it matters most, he's not going to be turning the ball over. The question for the Buccaneers when it comes late into the season is, are they going to have do they have enough big plays in them, or can they rely on kind of those dink and dunks that we saw Tom and Bill Belichick execute in New England for years? They have a great defense. They have a great offense. The question is going to come down to is, does Tom Brady have enough left in the tank at his age to kind of to beat a team like the Chiefs or the Ravens or the Seahawks? That time will tell, but Tampa Bay has to be looking at the division saying, we're definitely going to win the division after watching the Saints play over the first 2 weeks.
Yeah. Dari, what do you think? As a former Brady fan, what do you think of the Buccaneers?
For the first time, I was actually a little bit nervous on Tampa Bay. Just generally seeing Tom Brady actually performing well, and he has his weapons. I don't know. I think Godwin got injured, right? I don't know if he's going to be back for their next game, but Mike Evans is always consistent with them, and definitely I'm looking to see where they go from here. We all know they have the offensive talent, Tampa Bay. I'm just really interested to see how they do in this division, and going forward, if Tom Brady can be consistent in the next few games, because there's a lot of talent there, and I guess we have to see where it goes.
Let's move on to the AFC East. The Bills and Patriots. It's seeming like a little bit of a turn of the old guard. The Patriots aren't the same team with Tom Brady. Cam Newton's done a very good job, but they are second in division because the Bills are 3-0. Josh Allen has been terrific to start the year. They almost blew the dreaded 28-3 lead, as New England fans are very familiar with. But Buffalo has played really well. They ended up coming back after giving up that big lead, and they still ended up winning the game. What have you seen from Buffalo that scares you, and do you see them beating New England, or do you see them finishing atop of New England in the AFC East?
You know what? It's a hard one. Buffalo have been impressive. They've started very well. And generally, I think as a Patriots fan, I'm gonna say I don't think so. I think eventually they're gonna come down a little bit, especially when we do play them in a few weeks' time. But that being said, they have been impressive so far. In the running game, they've applied a lot of things to this team and have kind of developed over the last 2 years with their starting quarterback and the way they've kind of merged into this team where I think a lot of AFC teams are really discrediting them, or kind of, I would say, I want to consider them as a dark horse or a type of team where they're not really the talking point all the time, but they're still 3-0. And I think that is very impressive to have. That being said, in terms of winning this division, I still think that the Patriots will come on top eventually. I just think Buffalo are going to continue on, and it's going to come down to that game, to their first game of the season. I believe it's either week 5 or week 6. That being said, I'm very excited to see this team, and it's kind of cool to see Buffalo doing as well as they are. But we'll have to see who comes up on top.
Yeah. I mean, the Rams game was impressive. I think beat it. Again, I don't like them blowing a lead, but in the first half they looked terrific. They all of a sudden looked like a team like, whoa, who's this team? We haven't really seen this Buffalo, despite them making the playoffs. And again, they should have beat Houston. They had the 17-0 lead, and they kind of, or 16-0. I think it was a 2-possession game late, and Houston managed to come back, win that game in overtime. Buffalo's not there yet in terms of closing out games and kind of I think they're not going to cause great teams trouble in the playoffs simply because Josh Allen isn't developed completely yet. I think he still has to reach another level in his game in order for us to consider that. Again, the Bills don't have a run game. That scares me. Their run game has been pretty non-existent. Josh Allen, I mean, look, he's throwing the ball great. Now he has weapons in Stephon Diggs. Cole Beasley's kind of that third guy. He'll go in the slot. We saw what he did for Dallas. We know what Cole Beasley brings you. He brings you toughness. He'll bring you, clutch catches. We saw that 3rd and 22, where he just kind of snuck under a few Rams, caught it, got 23 yards, 1 yard extra. But the Patriots are Cam Newton surprising with how well he's playing. I think it's his renaissance. I would be surprised if he isn't comeback player of the year, simply because the Patriots defense will obviously help him, and I'm sure they're going to be in the playoffs because they have the best coach in the world still. The Patriots still have a major advantage coaching wise. Will they look as good as previous years? No, but when you lose one of the best QBs of all time, you're not gonna look as the same team. But the Patriots seem like they're gonna transition well. They still have a top 3 defense. They still have enough offense with Cam Newton, and they're in a division with the Dolphins and Jets where they're non-threats. They'll probably be a wild card team if they don't win the division, but there's a lot of questions with New England, and I think they're answering a lot of them so far. So credit to them. Before we wrap up our football segment, there's been a lot to cover, and there's going to be a lot more to cover as the season develops. Let's talk about probably the most disappointing team. No, not probably, the most disappointing team in football, the Philadelphia Eagles. Sitting at 0-1, they just tied the Cincinnati Bengals. They lost to the Washington football team. They lost to the Rams the previous week. This is a team that won the Super Bowl not too long ago. But, I mean, where do we start with this team? Do we want to start with Carson Wentz?
Yeah, let's start with Wentz. I'm not even the Eagles fan, but I am a Philadelphia Flyers fan. So to see the city fail in any sport is still as a fan of the Flyers, it still hurts to see. But Carson Wentz, I mean, the team overall has been playing well, but he is a quarterback that he's like a franchise quarterback. When he came to Eagles, he thought he was supposed to come in as the savior of the Eagles and he did. He led them to the playoffs, and then Nick Foles won the Super Bowl. But I mean, you can't be a franchise quarterback and play like this. It doesn't matter if these are just some off games. You can't have this many off games in a row. You can't, especially in a division as easy as the one that they're in. I mean, yeah, sure, Cowboys are a threat, but and they haven't faced them yet. But if the division is easy like this, to lose to the Washington football team, a team so dysfunctional they don't even have a name right now. I don't know what to say. Wentz has been disappointing. I think Doug Pearson said they look like they don't have the effort, and I think it shows. Like they're lacking the effort. And then even to tie Bengals. Bengals are not a team that you should tie. Like I respect Joe Burrow. He's a great QB. He's a great young QB. He will be great, I believe. But I mean the O line isn't too great. But and the team overall isn't anything special. So like that's not a team you should tie with. That's a team that should give you the win.
I was,
And
I
like
was, I was about to say, um, as good as Joe Burrow will be in his career, I mean, they're on pace to have the most amount of sacks by a wide mark. I think by over 100 projected.
yeah, because that O line is
Usually,
garbage.
when that happens, the projections kind of go down a little bit. But Cincinnati's O line is horrible. It is the worst. I mean, it's hard to say the worst definitively, but early on, they're clearly showing that they are the worst O line in football, and it's been like that for the last few years. So they
Yeah.
really have to fix that up because we saw what happened with Houston and how often Watson was getting hit. You need an O line is so important in football. I mean, every position is important because otherwise the team's going to be one way or another. The NFL
But
is
here's the
just
thing: with team
that
like Bengals,
competitive of a league. But yeah,
players like Joe Mixon, Joe Burrow, they're not going to be able to like thrive the way they should be with O line like that because they're
exactly.
just getting stopped.
So, I mean, look, they're sharing a record with the Eagles at 0-2-1, simply because it's so hard to put the blame on Carson Wentz because he's almost too good for that team. He has no wide receiver options. It's hard to get Miles Sanders going when you don't have a pass game. I don't know who their receivers are, just
I
no
mean,
name
Zach Ertz
guys
is a
that
tight
they
end,
a
and
tight
that's the
end.
best
But
receiver.
I mean, yeah, it's like Baltimore having Mark Andrews as your best tight end. Your best offensive player, your best offensive weapon outside of the QB can't be your tight end. You need a number one receiver. But forget the Eagles' offense. Their defense is also horrible. They've had holes for years. They just refuse to fill it. Howie Roseman, the Eagles fans are sick of him because he's doing just a horrible job up there. I almost feel bad for Doug Pearson. That team has no talent. They have a very good QB in Carson Wentz, and I think he's going to get a lot of unnecessary hate because the Eagles are struggling. Like, I just what can you really do when no one's open? I mean,
Yeah,
he can't be perfect.
yeah. I mean, I'm
And
not.
sorry, even if he is perfect, they're still not. They're still unlikely to win a game, even if Carson Wentz has the game of his life. That's just where the Eagles are right now.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like I know it sounds like I'm like hating on Wentz. I'm not. Like, I do
No, we're not.
respect Carson Wentz,
Look,
but
Carson's a
like,
great QB,
yeah,
but he's not playing at the level that we've seen him because the team around him is horrible.
yeah,
And it's
and
because
like,
it's because of the GM and whoever else is scouting. They've given him no weapons.
yeah,
They
and
just
like you said,
he
Miles
has no
Sanders
one.
hasn't played as people expected him to when he got drafted.
Yeah.
So like that, with the system they built around the Eagles right now, it's just kind of doomed to fail at the moment
They're
because
all
there's
over
nothing
the
they can do
place.
about
I
it.
mean, look, they lost to the Washington football team in week one. Dwayne Haskins is horrible. I don't like throwing that term around because to be in the league you have to be somewhat good. But compared to the other guys, Dwayne Haskins is horrible. The Washington played Cleveland. Look, they're almost beating Cleveland until finally Cleveland decided to wake up, use the run game, and push on. But that was without Chase Young. He left. Like Washington, I think Washington's actually overachieved with what they've done because they've kept they've kept bad teams in close games when really Washington shouldn't be winning more than 3 games this year. That's just the level that they're at right now, and that's just the amount of offensive talent they have right now. Dwayne Haskins is a QB. Like we'll see how long he lasts there, but you're not winning anything with him. He was horrible against Cleveland. But again, that's the team that Philadelphia lost to. Super
Yeah,
Bowl champions from 3 years ago. That's the team that lost to the Washington football team. There you go, Philadelphia. I'm sorry. You guys really don't deserve. Maybe you do after clapping off Michael Irvin when he was basically when he broke his back many years ago. Cowboys fans don't forget that. So maybe a few of you Eagles fans deserve it, but the majority of them don't. Yeah, it's a horrible division because the Eagles are going to be horrible all year. The Cowboys will find a way to win the division at 9-7. They've had a tough schedule. They're adjusting with Mike McCarthy. I just think because of their defense, they've lost against the Rams and the Seahawks. But then again, Russell Wilson's a terrific QB. But I think we've gone on a lot about the NFL. I think there's a lot to cover because there's so many things to talk about. But we'll end it there. We're 3 weeks in, and we're learning a lot about teams, and we'll continue to enjoy week 4. So if you're an NFL fan, it's been a terrific start to the year. A lot's happened, and a lot will continue to happen. So we'll try to break it down to the best of our ability, and we will continue on with this show, and we'll talk about the Premier League, where we're 3 weeks in. Some teams are 2 weeks in, but we're starting to discover a few things about some teams. Let's start at the top of the table, where Leicester are sitting at 3-0. Are you surprised at the way they beat City? Yes, they had 3 penalties, but I think they still deserve to win, because for 90 minutes they were better.
Oh no, 100%. They were the better team, and it was they deserved to beat City. They were definitely the better team. They had a lot of just generally seeing Vardy score, and the goals they were scoring, the way they were playing was very smart. To be honest, when City scored, I thought it was going to go completely the other way. I thought they were going to capitulate, and because they went in a little bit more defensive, it was going to become a one-sided game, but it went the other way. And as a United fan, it was great to see. But I'm not surprised, to be honest, about this Leicester team. This wasn't a problem last season for them. For me, it was just how they finished the season, and to me, I think they're going to continue to be decent this year. I think I will say I'm surprised that Jimmy Vardy's keeping the scoring record as much as he is, but it really does say a lot about how good they were, but also how bad City were. And I'm saying this because yes, they have their injuries. Yes, they weren't necessarily at their best, but there's still a lot of quality in that team. And I don't know, this game reminded me of very much of the Champions League game against Lyon just a month or so ago, where they didn't seem to have a plan B, and when they did, when they kept doing sideways passes, it felt very like just not them really. And I don't know if this is something to do with their offensive style of play, or the way Pep is grooming this team, but one of the biggest things is defensively, that team is still a mess. And with 400 million or however much they put into this team, they're not performing well. And I really do think Pep should be getting a lot of pressure for this, because that was not a great performance against a team they should be beating. Not to discredit Leicester, they are supposed to be a title-winning team, and that wasn't a title-winning performance.
The reason I picked Liverpool to win the league again, if they're healthy, they're just going to win the league, because they're that consistent. And here's the problem with City. Look, they'll bring in Ruben Diaz, who will definitely he will become the #1 center back. From what I've seen from him when I watch him with Portugal, I've caught a few Europa League games with Benfica. He always stands out. I think Ruben Diaz is a terrific by his height. Then again, they spend so much money on you said 400 million. That's just on defenders. We're not talking about the attackers. Like, I think they have too many players. Now you can say depth is great, but when you have that many players, fighting for 11 spots, it's going to create controversy. And the problem is they still have so much weakness at fullback. I think Kyle Walker, I think if he's healthy, he has to be starting. But Mendy, not good enough.
Yeah.
Who else are there? They have so many. Cancelo, we haven't seen enough. We thought Cancelo was good for 30 mil. Swapped him with Danilo. He really hasn't shown his true potential. Zinchenko is not really a fullback, and he's playing consistently. I think Pep just has so many options that he keeps trying to tinker, and we saw it with Lyon. They just have too many options, and I think Pep's almost trying to outsmart himself, and he has to find a top 11. He has to find his best 11 players and almost stick with it, because now you have Fernan Torres in the mix. You have Riyad Mahrez, Bernardo Silva, and Raheem Sterling on the wings. Now you need a fourth guy in Fernan Torres. Then you have Phil Foden finally getting his chance, but you still have Gundogan sitting there, Fernandinho, Rodri, De Bruyne, who's when he's healthy starts every game. So it's just there's so many spots that they're all competing for, and there's so many world-class players. It almost feels like they have too many things offensively, and defensively they're not good enough. Aki for 40 million doesn't make sense. You don't need him.
No, it doesn't.
Stones is the same. He's almost like like one of the Aki is one of those footballers that like a hipster that the hipsters love. He kind of plays out the back. He's good with his feet. But I mean, there's a reason he was at Bournemouth for the last few years. He's not City's level. With all due respect to Aki, there's a reason Chelsea got rid of him. There's a reason he was at Bournemouth. He's not the level of defender they need. And I think Liverpool have a head start. I think City are very susceptible to being countered, and against teams like Leicester, we'll see other teams in the Big Six give them trouble. Even teams like Everton. I think City are just more prone to drop points compared to Liverpool. And that's why I see Liverpool winning the league again, because I think they're just too consistent. And as long as that front three and Van Dijk stays healthy, again, as well as their fullbacks, I think they're fine.
You know what it is, though? What bothers me is that this, unlike Chelsea, unlike Arsenal, and say what you want, even with United and Tottenham, the thing about these teams is when they spend their money, they try to spend it on places where they think they can improve the team, and they've taken some take too much time, like United, but some they have really scouted, especially Chelsea with getting Warner and getting all these and Havertz and all this. What City do is they just spend the money without really thinking about the logistics of it fitting in the team. And this has been proven with many players they bought throughout the years. They brought someone like Angelino, which was like a big money signing last year.
Maybe not big money, but they
the fee says something. The fee says something.
They
about
spent maybe under 10 mil. I think there's other.
No, it was a lot more than that, wasn't it?
No, Angelino was cheap.
Okay.
It's other guys that just cost, like Mendy clearly shouldn't be the world record fee for a defender, even when he was bought two or 3 years ago. Yeah, I think you're spot on with City. I think with Pep they're just spending money in too many places, and it doesn't make sense. I think with Chelsea, I think until this window they've kind of spent recklessly. In 2004, they were lucky to have that core. They had that great defense. They spent right. They got Czech. They got their four main guys that carried them for the 10 years. Czech, Lampard, Drogba, and Terry. Those four were world class. Terry and Czech were top two in their position at the very least in the Premier League throughout their times. Lampard, again, top two. You can argue Gerrard, Scholes, but again, he's competing right with them. It's a debate for another day. And then Drogba, a big game player. You know what he gave you. So, and then you could kind of build a team around those guys. You had SCN, John Obi Mikel come in. Carvalho was a great partnership. Ivanovic. So Chelsea had a list of players that worked well combined with their top four core. I think over the last 5 years, they spent, poorly with, bringing guys like Antonio Conte, Sarri. It was almost quick fixes. And they're lucky they had Hazard, who kind of was able to carry them in a lot of times where they shouldn't have. But because the Prem has reached such a high level with Liverpool and City, they raised that bar so high. I think Chelsea realized they weren't able to do that, and they've kind of gone back, and they kind of sat back. They looked at their team. They said, "This is what we have to do." They brought in Lampard, and I think Lampard's gotten a lot of the respect of the players. We could argue his decision making hasn't been there yet. I think that is a place for him to improve. But again, I think what we've seen from Lampard is encouraging. Now he has the players that should be able to do it. If they stay healthy, obviously they'll become a threat. But I think we'll come back to this in about 2 months, and then we could really start analyzing Chelsea. Because once they throw Ziyech into the fold, Edouard Mendy, now you have hopefully a proper goalie after dealing with Kepa, who just over the last 2 years, you could forget what he did with Sarri, because over the last 2 years, he's been one of the worst goalies in Europe, in the world. He just can't, his confidence is gone. He can't stop a shot. We saw what happened against Liverpool. That just seems like his Chelsea career is over. So hopefully Edouard Mendy brings something new, throw in Chilwell. And look, we'll see what happens with Chelsea. It was a disappointing tie against West Brom, but you could almost chalk that down to Alonso making 2 individual errors and Silva with an uncharacteristic error. But there's a lot we're going to discover about Chelsea. I think with Lampard, we don't know what he really is as a manager yet. He's a young manager. He had 1 year at Derby, and now he's at Chelsea. So I think that's a big jump for a new manager. The expectations are sky high. So we'll see. We'll see what happens to Chelsea. But I think they have that. People are going to give them that 2-month period because of how many new faces are in the club. But we've seen them spend right. I think we know Kai Havertz will probably be a world-class player. So they invested the money in him to get him. a Timo Werner, we know what he brings, goals. So hopefully we see that. We'll see what Ziyech, brings to the table when he starts, and then Pulisic. So I think they have a lot of options. He started to kind of fine-tune the squad the way he wants, and we'll see how it develops, because he does have a lot of options now, Frank Lampard. And that's what we complained about last year. This year, he got the options. He spent a lot of money. So we'll see how it turns out, but the consensus is they have spent in the right areas. They've had the best window because they have invested, in young, talented players.
To be fair, when we're speaking about any team right now, it's 3 games in. So
Yes.
whatever the results are, whether it being bad or good, I personally think that you can only really start to make an assessment come, I would say, 10 games into the season. I'd be like, then you kind of see the table take shape, and you see the players that we have been talking about that have not even played. You just mentioned Chilwell and Ziyech have not even played a game yet.
So there's a lot with Chelsea. As a Chelsea fan, there's a lot of unknown with this team.
Mm-hmm.
There is more unknown with this team than any other team in the league, simply because there's so many pieces that still haven't been added, and we don't know what Lampard's going to do. And over the course of a full year, it's going to be really interesting to see what this particular group of players does. Because I still think they need another center back, because Thiago Silva only has maybe another year after this, so they're going to have to plan on bringing a number 1 center back. But I think it was a smart signing, because we know he'll bring that experience. We'll know he'll bring that composure in the back line. And regarding just Thiago Silva quickly, I think he'll kind of set the stage for one of these guys, maybe a Tomori or a Zuma for future years. But then again, we had Chelsea last year. The problem was the back line. Did Kepa help? No, but now that Kepa's not here, I think we'll see a different Chelsea defense, and it has to improve now that Lampard has got his left back. Reece James has all the hype at right back, so we'll see what he does, and then we'll see what happens with Mendy and whoever else they plug in at center back. So it's going to be an interesting. Chelsea has so many question marks. So again, tying West Brom is disappointing, but coming back from 3-0 is an encouraging sign. You could say all you want about you shouldn't be down 3-0, but Chelsea are at the point where they should be excited that the team fought back to tie that game 3-3. Manchester United just beat Brighton, but the VAR has been the big controversy. We'll talk quickly about Manchester United. I think I don't want to talk too much about the game, because I think we'll have the same discussion as last week. Slow. Not very inspiring. So I'll let you make a quick take on United. I'm not going to say too much, and then we'll go quickly into VAR and how that's kind of affected some of the early games.
Yeah, that was a very disappointing performance. Waking up early to watch that. If you're a United fan, you can't be satisfied with that style of play. It simply wasn't good enough all around. Pogba was very poor, and it's been very disappointing for me. There's just generally been no attacking flair that they had in the second half of the season last year. What's really worrying to me, though, is that I feel like we're trying to trust into some of these players like Greenwood and to our younger talent to get us through these games. But really, it's starting to put an effect. I can really tell that when we lost in the Europa League, we were really feeling the effect even after being a month off. It's kind of getting a little bit ridiculous. We still haven't made any real signings yet, besides for Van der Beek, which didn't even barely played on Saturday. So just generally, there's a little bit of turmoil going around the club and what they're going to be going forward. In terms of us getting the result, I have to be honest, after the game, I was completely on another level, on cloud 9 with it, because we did not deserve to win that game by any stretch. And I think I'm happy that we got the result, but I'm also really disappointed that it had to come down to a VAR decision for us to win it. That being said, I'll take the 3 points. It's definitely our first one of the season. But there's a lot to improve. There's a lot of issues in around the club, and I think United fans, it's going to be a little bit frustrating coming to this next week for the transfer window and the following games, such as Tottenham next weekend.
Hypothetically, I think what's going to happen is Alex Telles comes, Sancho doesn't, and I think it stops at Alex Telles. I think just because you guys left it too late, I think it's under a week left, right? in the
Yeah,
window.
just under a
So
week. Yeah.
we'll assume he get Tellez done, simply because I think that's where the rumors are, and I think it's pretty clear he wants to come 30 mil, whatever. But without Sancho, the guy that all United fans have dreamt of all summer, where does United finish with this squad and
I
Tellez?
I told you from the start, though, I didn't think we were going to get Sancho even back in the summer, because if we weren't going to make that bid for 120 million, it was not going to happen. And simply put, United were not making that bid. They weren't.
It seems Dortmund set their price, unless they're lying. It seemed like they just didn't match 120 mil and said, "Look, we still have 3 years in his contract. Next year, we know Real Madrid will come after him. We don't have any incentive to sell." And I think United were a bit naive. I think they're just very naive, and they need Sancho, because Sancho directly improves that attack. He helps Greenwood develop. If there's an injury, you saw in someone else. Just you need that depth, you need that competition, and I think United just an injury away in that front three from losing a lot of results, because they didn't look good against Palace. They didn't look good against Brighton. Brighton hit the woodwork 5 times, and they lost from a last minute penalty. So United obviously have improvement. If you guys don't get Sancho, if the squad, plus Tella, if that's the squad, where do you guys finish, and does Ollie last the year?
All I'll say is I think it's 1 step forward, 2 steps back, and it's been a trend since Sir Alex left. That being said, in terms of where we're going to finish, it's difficult. It really depends. I think Tellez is going to be a good signing. You are right in that the fact that if we lose one of our front three, if Rashford gets injured or Greenwood gets injured, we are 1 injury away of missing out the top 4. That being said, I'm going with the squad that we currently have. So I still think we'll finish 4th. However, I don't think it'll be easy. I think European football will put a toll on us, and that is all to do with the board and the fact that we have not spent the money right this summer. And in terms of Ole, I find it so difficult, and I feel so bad for him. No matter if he gets sacked or not, or whatever happens to him in the future, I don't find it fair that he hasn't gotten the backing as other managers. You could say what you want about Arteta and Lampard, and personally, I like both coaches. But the thing is, they've had the backing of the board. They've had money to spend.
Yeah, see, I argue. Arteta, what money has Arteta spent? He spent 30 million on
Gabriel.
Yeah, but
that's a great signing.
That's a great deal. They didn't overspend for him. I think Arsenal. I think getting Gabriel was big because they needed center back help. Salabia will come in. We still really don't know what he is. With all due respect to Saint Etienne, and the French league is just not at the same level as the Premier League, and I don't know why he hasn't been included yet. I don't know if there's an injury there or something, if they're trying to, the Arteta's trying to teach him his style.
It's a work in progress.
But Gabriel's looked impressive. Again, someone United was heavily linked to, and someone that they could have got for 30 mil, and he could have slotted with Maguire. A quick, strong, athletic center back, that would have gone perfectly with Harry Maguire. Again, with that being said, we don't know if they're going to get Aouar from Lyon. Thomas Partey is still up in the air. He has a release clause. I don't know why they just don't activate it for 50 mil. I don't know if there's a broke club. It doesn't seem like it, because they're Arsenal. They are making the money, and they just don't have any net spend this summer. So I don't think Arteta's been back. I think Arteta has impressed me more than even Lampard or Ole, because he's completely changed the way Arsenal play. They play from the back. A lot of their goals start with the goalie touching it. So I think it's actually impressive with the squad that he has, what he's been able to do. If they get Aouar, they'll have that creativity in midfield, something they're lacking, something that will massively help against big teams, because we saw against Liverpool, they really struggled to get that creativity going. And they struggled against Liverpool's press, because they played out at the back, but they don't have the elite level of players that Liverpool has. So that's why Liverpool was able to beat them, just like Chelsea, because both teams are still a work in progress. Chelsea now has the players. I still think Arsenal don't have the world-class players that they need to compete. I think getting Tierney was good. Gabriel was good. Aubameyang, great player. The midfield seems weak to me. Xhaka doesn't seem like a Premier League winning midfielder. Neither does El Nelny. Ozil's, somewhere not in England. And again, that's what I'll say about Arsenal. They're not there yet, because I don't think Arteta's been backed the way that you claim. He's made only one signing. Ollie's been back more, but I think Man United obviously don't have the squad to compete yet because their defense is not good enough. And it's simple as that.
I would argue though that the reason why the reason why I'm saying Arsenal's been that he has been back because this is a project for him. It's unlike okay, let's be fair here. Lampard and Ole in terms of their projects are a little bit more far ahead in terms of what they've done and what they have and what they're going to go forward with. Arteta came into this team in the middle of the season and has already changed the way they've played. Yes, he's only brought in one player, but they're thinking about bringing others, and you can obviously tell that they have a strategy going forward. That's why I meant the back. I'm not saying that they made the signings yet.
Okay,
I'm saying that going forward, they have a plan. Lampard, you can tell there is a structure plan. He said to Roman, I want these players. I want to put in this position. The thing with Ole, and why I don't think he's been back is because, yes, they've gone players like Maguire, but he spent such a total amount of 80 million. How much million? I don't even know last season to bring in these players. And again, I'm not going to say it's similar to City. It isn't. But the thing is, you're just kind of signing players for the fun of it in a way where they don't fit the requirements of what the team needs. Daniel James was not a player we needed. He was a championship player who would be a squad player. I would argue Bissaka maybe and Maguire maybe, but for the sum for Maguire was not good enough. My point being, though, we haven't done that this transfer window. Van der Beek being that player was not the requirement, the non-required player we need. We needed more, and I feel like that is something that we need to see a change in the board as a United fan. But again, you can go all day with this, but it really is it's kind of a shambles at the moment.
Before we move on to the VAR debate, here's what I've noticed about United. I think Ollie, I think he gives his front players the creativity to do what they want. The problem is when teams sit back, I don't think he has the plan or he has the tactics to break down a team like Palace, like Burnley, a team that's notorious for sitting back. They struggle against Brighton. They're seeing like Leeds. I think United will struggle against teams that they should be beating because Ollie doesn't have that that plan B. If they score early, great, but the trend with United is if they go down early, can they kind of recover it? And that's why it's hard for me to see United making the top four over in Arsenal because Arsenal just seems like they have better tactics and they seem like they're more prepared week in, week out from what we've seen early on. With United, they've spent the money, but they spent the money in the wrong places. I think they didn't need Van de Beek. They could have signed somewhere else. You have McTominay and Fred that kind of sit in that same position. Bruno has his role established as the number 8, so there's no need for number 8. And the problem in the midfield is Paul Pogba almost looks lost. He's staying too far deep, but he almost has to be because if he plays as high up as Bruno, then they're going to concede a lot of goals at the back because they won't have that cover. Matic at his age isn't fast enough to stop those quick counterattacks all by himself. McTominay's more of a box-to-box. He's on a DM. Fred also kind of similar to McTominay, but he's not that world-class level of midfield. So I think United just has a personnel problem. I think defensively, they're defending shocking. In the 94th minute, they just let Solly March run back post. That's on one Bissaka to cover him. Maguire and Lindelof haven't been good enough through 3 weeks. We'll see if they improve, but it seems unlikely that they'll get drastically better. So United scares me. I don't know what's going to happen with them, but they have to start playing better football quick because we know they're not going to get away with playing like that. They're not going to get away with last minute penalties like they did last year because the handball rule will change. I think the penalty was correct. The penalty was correct. We'll get into that in a second. But United, they can't rely on penalties like they did last year. I think they're far too reliant on kind of winning cheaply, and it's just not going to happen this year. You can't repeat that. So Ollie has a lot of work ahead of him because the United boards failed to kind of get the world-class pieces needed in order to win a Premier League. But again, we'll see week in, week out. But United will always be box office this year because you really don't know what to expect from them. Before we finish this incredibly long podcast, almost everything's happening at once. You have the NBA and NHL finishing in the finals. Baseball is in the playoffs, and football and the other and European football are getting underway. So this is one of those strange podcasts where we've had a lot to talk about, but we'll finish off with the most controversial subject from the football world, and it's the use of VAR and the handball calls that we've seen over the first 3 weeks. Daria, just quickly, what has to change?
It's terrible because me and you were actually talking about it off camera. We were talking about the fact that it had before this weekend. It was a little bit. We were starting to see a little bit more consistency in calls, and then this week happened. There were a lot of handball calls that should have been given. Some of them that shouldn't have been given. Some of them that were given after the whistle had blown, like the United game. It's really polarizing to me, the fact that we're in 2020 and we're still debating what a handball is in the Premier League. It's kind of sad because we don't know if it's by your side, is that considered a penalty? Is it if it's away from your body, is it not, or it is it intentional? And it says in the law that the law keeps changing. And to be honest with you, I couldn't even reiterate it to you right now because I really don't know. What do you consider a handball anymore in football? Now that being said, I think it's still VAR is a work in progress. There's still certain things they got to fix up, and as I said before, there are calls that are being made that I think are, to give credit to VAR, are pretty good. Problem is that they still have some fixing up to do with the ones they get wrong, and those ones are coming quite fast. Especially this weekend, it was pretty poor all around refereeing, I think.
See, it's weird.
Yeah.
I think they were consistent last week, and then this week they just became inconsistent with it. Because, frankly, if they were consistent, then there should be more handballs given. We saw the Kai Havertz goal; it touched his hand. But the crazy thing is, no one's talking about it because I think we can all agree that it was the right call. We think it shouldn't have been called back, and that's why that's not the controversy. The controversy is they're giving ridiculous penalties. Look, if the ball touches the defender's hand, the FA has to use judgment. They need to get their head out of their ass, and they need to start using better judgment. The Eric Dyer call, we all know, is ridiculous, and it's about the integrity of the game.
Yeah.
It's too much integrity, and Newcastle fans, they're happy, but even Newcastle fans love it. It's a ridiculous penalty because teams don't want to win like that. Like, it's just teams. We know it's just. It doesn't feel good when you're getting these ridiculous calls that shouldn't be penalties. I think VAR has actually gone a lot more right this year. I think the big controversy last year is offside when they're calling everything a millimeter off, but they've almost fixed that. And it's quite clear that they're going to fix the handball rule. They're not going to wait a full year because there's been too much criticism, online from pundits that are quite clearly more knowledgeable than the FA, and they're saying, well, you have to change the rule. You have to use better judgment. We could talk about the Eric Dyer one against Newcastle. He doesn't know anything about it. Same with the one in Crystal Palace when Digne headed the ball down, hits Joel Ward. He can't do anything. The FA has to start using better judgment. Everything that touches a hand isn't a handball. But it was almost inconsistent because the calls that kind of stayed, even in the Liverpool game when it touched Jota's arm, again, we all agree that shouldn't have been called handball. VAR is here not to micromanage, it's to change calls that are definitively wrong. And I think VAR last year micromanaged too much. I think they're in danger of that happening again this year with handballs, so they have to fix it up quickly. I think it's been slightly better, but the problem is they're getting it so wrong in one area specifically that it's hurting their reputation of their refs, as it should. But it's also the FA, because I think they're just going by what they're told to do. I think the refs have called the games better. It's just the ridiculous VAR decisions. I'm quick to slander the refs. I don't think it's been the refs. I think it's been the use of VAR. I don't think it's their fault. I think they're being told what to do, and we know it's going to change quickly because the FA they're not that dense. They will change the law because everyone that's ever watched football, anyone that has any love for anyone that wants integrity for the game knows that they have to fix the rule, and they have to use better judgment. It comes down to judgment. Neil Maupay, his arm was outstretched. His hand shouldn't be there. And because it hit his hand, the ball had a different trajectory. but you can't start calling it a yard away. It hits his hand because Joel Ward didn't know anything about it in the Everton game. Eric Dyer didn't know anything about it, and that Andy Carroll ball wasn't close to going in. He was heading it downwards to a teammate. It hits his arm, but it doesn't affect the play. And the FA needs to start using better judgment. That's what will finish that off, because it has, frankly, just been ridiculous how much they have gone wrong with handballs specifically. We've had a heavy show today. We've talked about a lot. Next week's going to be, again, another crazy week because a few leagues are winding down. But the NBA, it's almost over. Miami, LA, that's going to be the big talking point this week. NBA Finals, tune into that. If you're a baseball fan, tune into the Jays. They're going to be an exciting team, not just for this series, but for the future. So we'll learn a little bit about their character. NFL Week 4, we'll be back next week to talk about that. And the Premier League. There's always controversy in the Premier League. That's why it's one of the greatest leagues in the world. So we'll be back to discuss that. Congratulations to Tampa Bay Lightning on winning the Stanley Cup, an incredible achievement. And from 5-5 Sports, it's been a pleasure this week. I hope you guys stuck with us, and we'll see you guys next week. Take care.
Thank you guys for listening.
Bye-bye.